It does say starting, so yeah, there we
Great.
go.
Super. Good. Well, a formal good morning to everybody. Welcome to the last Council of Governors meeting formally for this calendar year, anyway. And it feels very close to that the sort of Christmas period of this year. But and I hope everyone's keeping well. So lovely to see so many of you here. I know a number of colleagues also joined the earlier COG workshop, which sounded like it went really well. I needed to pop out of it briefly, but it sounded like a great opportunity to have an informal conversation as well. So anyway, welcome to everybody to the formal meeting. We do have a few apologies that we have received. From our governor colleagues, we've had apologies from Monica Maparanyanga, from Mark Major and Richard Amponza. And we also have apologies from Angela Hillary as our CEO. I know believe she's attending an ICB meeting this morning, but we're very pleased because Dave Mayer is here, and Dave is our Deputy CEO and is well able to cover the agenda with us. So look forward to hearing from Dave a little bit later. I also just wanted to take the opportunity to mention to governor colleagues that this is Saqib Ali's last meeting. Saqib is on the call. He's been very good at being, even though he's been sort of coming to the end of his term. We've known about that now for a little while. Saqib has been fantastic in being present at all our meetings and things. So I just want everybody to take the moment to say thank you to Saqib and wish him all the best. I know some of us will hopefully still catch up with him before the end of the month, but this is the last opportunity probably governors will have to see Saqib. So I just wanted everybody to have the opportunity to say thank you. So thanks very much, Saqib, for your contribution. Really enjoyed having you as a non-exec, and colleagues will have we'll hear more about our plans for replacing Saqib in our private session.
Thanks,
So
Krishna.
thank you, Saqib. Thank you. Okay, so we move on then to declarations of interest. Obviously, if there's anything specific in relation to items on the agenda today, then do take a moment to highlight them to me. But otherwise, we'll take it that you've declared your interest in the register that's available, which we just ask you to keep up to date. So that's item 2. Item 3, paper B, is the minutes of our previous meeting from 10th of October. So just check with you that your content, that it's accurate. I can see Sue's hand up. So Sue, please.
Yeah, just looking through the last minutes, I didn't appear on either the attendees or the apologies, and I'm pretty sure I was at the meeting.
Okay, thank you, Sue. Apologies for omitting your presence there. So we will make an amendment. So Jo, can I leave that with you to review?
Yeah, it's just to acknowledge as well. I think Simon also contacted me that he was missing from the minutes as well after attending. So I'll note those and make the amendments to those minutes. Yeah.
Lovely, thank you. So we absolutely note those points of accuracy. Without obviously, despite that, in terms of the broader content, I am taking it the governor's content that it is an accurate reflection of the meeting. So we'll approve those minutes subject to the amendments that we have highlighted. So thank you very much. Are there any matters arising or outstanding actions that we need to consider? I don't think there are any outstanding actions, are there, Jo, at the minute? So are there any matters arising from the minutes that governors would want to highlight at this stage? No? Okay, I'll take that as nothing outstanding. So thank you very much. So we move on to the substantial business.
I'm sorry, Krishni.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
Sorry, Adam.
I'm sorry, Krishni. No, I was quite late in putting my hand up. I noted that John queried if there were any plans to extend the opening hours of crisis cafes, and I don't recall. But it says it will be taken away for discussion. I just wondered if there was maybe at the next meeting we can have an update on that, please.
Yeah. And do you want to comment on that at all? I'll bring Anne in.
Yes, it's gone back into our MHLGA pillar of work. So I'll get some feedback and bring it for next time. So I'll take that as an action. At the moment, we've got the funding that we have to achieve what we have with the third sector, but I can get them to review it. I don't know what the outcome of that will be, but I will ask that and make sure that pillar has done that action so I can feed back to you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Anne. So just then to, I think for context, just to make sure, it is something it's not within our gift to just act to extend the hours. Obviously, what Anne's highlighting is that there are partners involved and there's funding implications. So it's something we can make sure we ask the question, but we may not have the answer that actually we would ideally like to offer at this stage. But I think it is probably something, Anne, we'd want to keep under review in any case, isn't it? But perhaps if we log that, Joe, as a specific action, just so we can ask Anne to feed back specifically at the next meeting, I think that would be helpful. But just to note that it may not be a quick or easy resolution, I think. Thank you, Anne, and thanks, Adam, for highlighting that. So we move on then to the staff governor story. So Anu is lined up to share her experiences as a member of staff in the role that she undertakes. I think we've got the slides up, so all that looks like it's working. So Anu, over to you then. Thank you.
Thank you, Krishni. It's such a privilege to come and talk about my story. And thank you, David, for the wonderful meeting that we had previously. It was fantastic. And from that, I thought of the vision, and the mission was really, really good. And I want to thank you for actually presenting to us. And it was very useful. So I am Anu Gunasekara, and I work in the clinical systems team as a product specialist. And I have joined as a staff governor, and it has been a very interesting journey. I have to say, I have learned quite a lot, and I have made notes, and it's really, really good. So let's go to the second slide, please. Thank you. So just a quick thing about my background. I was born in Scotland and was taken to Sri Lanka because my parents are Sri Lankan, so they took me back to Sri Lanka. And then I came back when I was 19 years old, back to UK. And I was doing something else, not working with NHS. But then I went back. I have a big journey. Then I went to USA, stayed there for a couple of years, went back to Sri Lanka, and then I came back here in 2002, having a family. So I had my husband and my lovely 2 girls. So brief work history with NHS or NHFT, if I say. I started off as a cleaner. You might wonder why. Yeah, because NHS didn't, probably at that time, long time ago, didn't accept my, qualifications that I had from Sri Lanka. So I started off as a cleaner, and then went to work in a reception area, and then I worked with the safeguarding team for 5 years. And then because I had experience of IT as well, I was able to come into clinical systems team in 2012. And I've worked ever since that day, from November 12th, 2012, I have been working for clinical systems team. And from that team also, I have within the team, I have moved up a tiny bit as well. So my attraction to my role was health and IT interests. So I always wanted to work in a health setting. And because of my IT background, I thought, okay, let me actually come and see what I can actually be a part and help out as well. And the other thing, the attraction to my role was with the clinical systems team was having people in mind and the compassion. And I know NHFT has that a lot, We talk about people focus, our staff, but mainly it's our patients and having the compassion. And over the years, while working within clinical systems team, I got a very bad health, got into very bad health issues, and now I'm a bit of a disabled person. Not bit, I am a disabled person with having a long-term sickness, right? And so now, when I was actually looking at applying to the staff governor role, I was thinking, oh, I can actually bring my staff experience plus being a patient looked after by actually a couple of times. I have been looked after by the MSK team, and I'm a diabetic, so diabetes team. So like that, I have received, and I have to say, the nurses and the physiotherapists and them, they have really done a fantastic work. So I have to be thankful to all of them who have been there in my journey as a patient, and all the people who have helped me in my journey as a staff, who actually trusted that I can actually do and bring things to NHFT. Okay, so that is there's so much more to talk about, but I thought I will just keep it to that. The next slide, please. You might be wondering, what's that? I was actually in 2005 and 6. I was, if you look at it, it says I was the representative for equality and diversity. And it was very interesting when I saw that it was on, I think, the primary care paper that was published, and it was sent through the door. And I looked at it, I thought, oh, this is my name there. So I thought I will bring that in because I am actually really involved with the REACH network that talks about equality and diversity and all of that. And so I was thinking, oh, I have been there from 2005. And I have had a journey. I don't want to talk about it at the moment, but it's really good because I'm still standing and I enjoy my role. I really enjoy what I'm doing now, because if you go to the next slide, please. Thank you, Joe. Okay, so next slide. I'm looking at, yeah. So what am I doing in my role day to day? Okay, I support IT software for all NHFT staff, all, from the healthcare assistants up to the consultants. Okay, I have been a trainer in clinical systems team for 8 years, and now just about a year ago, I moved to support team. Okay, what do? We support System 1. System 1 is the main patient record that we use in NHFT. And I have to say it's fantastic. Why? Because when I used to go as a patient to different hospitals, and if I go the second or the third time, I have to repeat the whole history, because either they have written on paper and they can't locate it or whatever. So, but System 1, using System 1 in NHFT has, I think everybody should use a clinical systems team like this, clinical systems like this, okay? And then we've introduced Bridget. It's an app on a phone, where when healthcare assistants or nurses who go and do the observations of patients, then they have to record everything on this little app. Okay. And that also I went and supported when they introduced the app to all the different wards. And then EPMA is electronic patient management thing, and that also is very, very good. So everything electronically, prescribing is done, and then even giving patients all the medication is done electronic. It's looking at the electronic record and then doing, giving the patients the right things. Then ICE is another thing where you record radiology and pathology as well. And then we have, I help with projects. And then if staff want to build any templates or anything to help them in System 1, I have been there and helping as well with, through projects. And then I have, as I said, I was teaching for 8 years, and I really enjoyed that teaching. And then I'm a member of the REACH Network, Enable Network, and Staff Governor now as a staff governor. Because I know I have a very restricted time to talk, so that's why I'm talking a little bit fast. And being a member of the REACH Network, I have learned a lot, and that community is really, really good. They are really looking into different things, discussing different things, and I think what do you call, like, just try to find that word where they will impact, NHFT. An Enable Network is really good because it helps me to listen to different stories and even share my story with the Enable Network team, which is a disability kind of network team. And the last slide, please. It's the most satisfying. There's two things: most satisfying thing and most challenging thing. Okay, I love helping people. So for me, I always think I'm a patient and we are actually helping patients. Our final goal is looking after patients. So I'm, as an IT person, I try to help as much as possible the staff, NHFT staff, so they can actually look after the patients using the technology. Okay. And then teaching and training. So for me, I thought I will finish teaching after 8 years. No, still day to day, because some people know that I have been training. They say, "Oh, can you help me? I can't understand. Can you help me?" So I have been able to teach and train. And I have to say, the team that I work, the support team in the clinical systems team, is the best team because they are really helping each other. And for me, I'm happy when the patients are helped. I just feel so happy. You won't even believe, some people, not this morning, I was helping a person because she called and she said to me, "Anu, I need to see the patients, but I can't access my System 1 because something is wrong with my card. Can you help me?" So I quickly helped her. And she said to me, "You made my day today." So like that. So when I hear that, I feel so happy because I know that staff can actually look after the patients by looking at the notes and actually doing the looking after the patient correctly. Most challenging thing, the last one, yes, not having up-to-date software to help staff. And I know NHFT or NHS as a whole, we are going through a difficult time. Okay, we have to do cutbacks and stuff like that. But that's the challenging thing because some of the software that we use to help the staff are not there at the moment. So they're saying that they will try to find the, good one, but with the best price. So just waiting for that. That's the challenging thing at the moment I'm facing. That's it from me.
Thank you so much, Anu. That was really, really good, and I hope you noticed all the hearts and the claps that you were getting whilst you were speaking, because I think your emphasis on supporting people as a non-clinician, but supporting people to do the best for patients was just so team NHFT.
Yes.
It's just everything that epitomizes, I think, what working together means, really, because in the end, we don't, as like you, I don't get to help patients, but I see the important role that we all play in supporting the staff that do the best they can, and that just came through loud and clear. So thank you very much. And I hope it's all right to mention, I know when we met at the induction, Adam, I think, Adam, didn't you say that you had actually experienced Anu's training, and you said how good she was? So do you want to come in?
Yeah, thank you, Krishna. Yeah, no, thanks for inviting me to speak. No, no, it was so lovely to see Anu, because I think you always remember kind people, don't you? That they leave a positive, lasting impression upon you. And I remember I worked for a short period as a carer peer support worker for the trust, whilst being a carer for my mother and undertaking study as well. And it was a newly created role, and so System 1 wasn't quite set up for carer peer support workers, and about where we recorded on the patient or the carer's notes. And I just remember Anu, very diligent, very kind. She went out of her way. She trained me on System 1, and I can really attest that she really does love helping people. So you're a real credit to the trust, Anu.
Thank you.
And it was great hearing your story as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Adam, and I hope it was all right to invite you in. I just remembered that from the induction and thought it was incredibly powerful and helpful. Did anyone want to ask any questions on the back of Anu's presentation, either for Anu or for us more generally? And I don't know whether Dave or David would also like to make a comment just generally about digital or IT developments, or kind of direction of travel, because obviously one of the challenges that Anu mentioned is just kind of investing in the right technology, which is absolutely a kind of priority from a national point of view, isn't it? So it'd be interesting to get perspective on that. But Michael, please.
Oh yes, hi. Thanks, Anu. I love your enthusiasm. It really shines through. What I wanted to ask you, Anu, is since you've been a governor, how do you use that experience working with your colleagues? And do you use it as an opportunity when you're working with wider teams to talk about the value of the governor role?
Yes, Michael. I have had lots of opportunities within my team, because they ask, well, how is the governor role going? What do you talk about? So certain things I can't share, but certain things I can share. In fact, Julie, who is actually retiring soon, Julie Mansfield, one of the directors, she mentioned that when we do, I think every 3 months, we do like a road show or kind of thing for all of us, whether I could share my story of being a staff governor and what I have experienced. So I am a person, if you know, I'm quite enthusiastic, and I talk about what I do. So staff governor role, not only in our team, because I actually talk to different teams when I'm supporting them. Then I say, some people say, oh, you are a staff governor, I see, because I have put in my little signature, and they say, what do you think about it? How does it help? Can we actually tell, like, I think Enable team wanted me to, kind of bring certain things. I said, okay, you let me know, then I can share with the governors. So like that, I have, been talking to people. Yes. Thank you, Michael.
Thanks, Anu. Some great examples there. And I think, this is where it's interesting, isn't it? What Anu's highlighted, I think, because she's a member of a number of staff networks, Reach and Enable being the specific one she's mentioned. That opportunity, I guess for public governors, it's a different kind of network. It might be an external network, but the opportunity to kind of share what you're learning and have a sort of two-way dialogue between governors and their networks does feel like a really important one. So that's something we can think about how we support you more with. But it's great that Anu has already started doing that. Dave Mayer, please.
Thanks, Krishna, and thanks, Anu. Great punchy presentation, really clear and really interesting to see. And I'll see you after this meeting. I'm going over to say goodbye to Julie. It's her goodbye session today. So in the Chief Exec report and Chair's report, we've obviously got the narrative in relation to the 3 major steps that the NHS is taking under the Department of Health, one of those being analog to digital. So a really exciting opportunity for us, particularly in the group space. NHFT has done, we're probably in the top kind of 5 in the region in terms of our digital maturity as a provider, measured using what's called a digital maturity assessment. So, and we've been working with NHS England, kind of explaining the steps we've taken to achieve that. So they're really interested in that maturity profile. So really good work that we've done, and more great work to do as part of a group with Leicester, which David Williams is going to support in his group director role. Looking at developing our kind of digital strategy in line with that shift from analog to digital. We're also fortunate in NHFT to have frontline digitisation funding. So I know Anu's talked about constraints on resources, but actually as a trust, we've been really fortunate to get frontline funding for digitisation, which was national capital funding. There'll be another round of that, which we will participate in, and others will too. So that's made a real difference to the underlying capabilities in terms of technology to do the things Anu has described. So yeah, more to do and exciting times ahead, I think.
Brilliant.
Thanks, Dave. And there's always more to do, isn't there? You know, although Dave says actually we're probably further forward than some other trusts, certainly on the digital maturity assessment, there's always more to do, and nationally we recognise there's a lot more to do, because, and I think Amanda Pritchard, the NHS England Chief Executive, recently announced back in a few weeks ago, you know, the importance of us, and it's probably worth mentioning here actually, how we use the NHS app. So when we're talking about digital, how we use the NHS app to really engage patients, to really help them get easier. Sort of, for example, there's a planned rollout of what's loosely being described as ping and book. So you get a notification instead of getting a letter from the breast screening service or the cervical screening service. You get a notification via the app, and the chance to book your appointment through the app. And that's the sort of digitization that is increasingly going to be rolled out nationally, which is really exciting, because I think for some people that will be a much better way of booking some of those more standard, what I would call more standard sort of appointments that people need to arrange. So actually, one of the things we might want to think about as governors is how do we help both our staff and our population, our community, really sign up to that app? You know, how do we increase app usage? Because the more we actually encourage people to use it, the more use, the more benefit we can all get, and the more efficient. Actually, if you think about replacing letters and emails and phone calls with a ping and book style notification that is really easy, that saves us money as well, and is probably easier for many patients. I mean, of course, we have to be careful about digital exclusion and making sure that you know, always be some people who we have to support differently to access those things. But where the majority can access things through the app, it's really in our interest to encourage our patients, encourage our staff to do that. So that's something I'd maybe kind of ask you to think about, actually, as possibly a membership kind of area of focus for next year for governors. Anu, I'll bring you back in for a final comment.
Yeah, thank you, Krishni. I just want to say I had a service visit this week, David and Judith, and I have to say it was fantastic. Wheatfield, we went there, and then we spoke to another David there. We spoke there, and it was very, very encouraging. And I just want to kind of reiterate what David said about vision. Together we thrive, building, compassionate, and well-being, and for all. Okay, so actually I have experienced it as a staff member and as a patient as well. And then the mission is so good, making a difference together. Yes, all of us have to be a part of it. We can't say, no, we can't do it. That's how we actually help the end user, who is the patient. So thank you.
Anna, what a fantastic way to finish. Thank you so much. You know, that you know, the way that you've articulated and brought all that together and kind of reinforced what you do and how that fits with the vision and mission of the Trust is fantastic. So thank you very much. And yeah, brilliant. Follow that, people. So well done, Anu, and really appreciate you sharing that. Okay, well, we'll move on then to the next item on our agenda. Councillor Governor's report then is item number 6, paper C. So over to you, Richard, please.
Thanks very much, Krishna. Yes, and how to follow Anu's story. But nonetheless, so this report naturally reflects the work that the whole Council of Governors have been doing over the last couple of months. So what I'm sharing here really is the work that all governors have been engaged with. So you'll see within the report, one of the key things that has happened since last time is that we've held another workshop with our colleagues over at Kettering General Hospital NHS Foundation Trust. We certainly get really good feedback from governors from both trusts actually on the value of these workshops, where we come together to consider working across the patch on joint initiatives. This time we had the opportunity to learn about some work that NHFT was leading across the system on mental health collaboration, but also some work that was being led by the colleagues at the acute hospital group on planned care. And so we're looking forward to the next of these workshops on the 10th of February, and indeed hope to continue to offer these opportunities as we progress into the 25-26 financial year. So staying on the theme of system working, the Integrated Care Board, the ICB, has held the first of a series of sessions that it's facilitating in relation to community engagement. So thanks very much to Pete Spink, who has agreed to participate in this group for NHFT. I think it's fair to say that this group is just getting off the ground, so did all of the usual things such as agreeing terms of reference at the first meeting, but we very much look forward to hearing from Pete as that meeting develops through the membership forum in terms of work that's happening across the system that we and our members can get engaged with as well. So look out for some more information on that over the coming months. So the third area of the report relates to our series of member webinars. I was really pleased to join this particular webinar where we heard about the work of the iDiscover service, which is, I guess, the equivalent service to our Recovery College for children, young people and their families. So we had a really good overview from service leads about what the service offers and indeed the impact that it's making. We heard actually from one of the younger people that has been involved in the iDiscover service about the benefit that their involvement had brought to them as well. So it was a really good session, and included the link in the report to the recording of the webinar. So for those that didn't get the opportunity to attend live, I really would encourage you to have a look at the webinar and indeed the resources on the staff room about this service, and spread the word. Really, it's certainly having some really positive impact for children, young people, and their families. So as a matter of governance, really, the next item in the report just reflects really that the Nominations and Remuneration Committee of the Council of Governors, very ably chaired by Carol Phillips, has overseen the completion of the mid-year reviews, both for our non-exec colleagues and Krishni as chair. So that has all been completed, and we're now preparing for the annual appraisal cycle, which will be upon us before we know it, heading over into the new calendar year. Similarly, Non-Rem has also been busily working to conclude the recruitment campaign for a non-exec director vacancy at NHSB, and also a new associate non-executive director opportunity across the group. And we'll be hearing a little bit more about the outcomes of that interview process at our session in private later today. So really, the only other aspects of the report are to highlight upcoming engagement events. I would encourage people to put these dates in their diary and join us for both the webinars and the workshops that we've got coming up. And of course, dates for diaries there also for Governor colleagues with some upcoming meetings. But I think that's all I wanted to say in relation to the report, Krishni, but happily take any questions or comments from governors or board members. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Richard. So very happy, obviously, to open up to questions. I just wanted to mention that I think in February's council meeting, so our February council meeting is 6th of February at 3 o'clock. We'll probably take the opportunity at that time to sort of brief governors a little bit more about how you can contribute to the the full annual appraisal process for non-executive directors and myself, because you do have a great opportunity to contribute to that, and we probably will use that April meeting to kind of share that with you in a little bit more detail. So that's a really good opportunity. I also was going to just ask if anybody who'd attended the iDiscover webinar wanted to make a quick comment on it. Or indeed, Pete, I don't know whether you want to say anything about your first meeting of the community group. I appreciate it's very early days, but feel free to come in if you'd like to.
Yes, Christine, it was interesting, and there was a lot to discuss and a lot to take away. So hopefully, after our next meeting, there will be some more meat on the bone, and I'll be able to bring something back to the group. But yeah, it was very good, and it was very interesting and very diverse in many ways. So I'm looking forward to, after Christmas when we have our next meeting to catch up with everybody.
Great. Good. Thanks, Pete. So was there anything else that anyone wanted to highlight in relation to the Council of Governors report from Richard? No? Okay. Thank you very much, Richard. So we'll kind of, I don't think there was anything for us to approve at this particular meeting. It's just for noting a regular update from Richard. So we move on then to item 7, which is the composition of the Council of Governors, which is a very specific discussion that we need to have, because this is something that we actually need to formally make a decision on. So I'll hand back to Richard to talk through what's on the table. Over to you, Richard.
Thanks, Christian. Need to remember to come off mute. Yeah, so this is a really important topic for the council. Indeed, is really the culmination of a series of discussions that we've been having over several months now. So although this may be the first time that we've been having the conversation in public, there's been quite a lot of discussion in the membership committee and indeed in previous governor workshops. So although the paper has been shared in advance, I will just also bring it up on screen to help facilitate the discussion this morning. So when the slides emerge, we'll get started. Right. So we're here really to talk about what the council wants to do to resolve some challenges that we've been having with vacancies, and this is being sequenced ahead of then the governor elections campaign that will be kicking off at some stage in the new calendar year. So this slide really serves to summarise the challenge, really the opportunity, if you prefer to view it that way, that we're looking to solve. So in headline terms, for some time now, we've struggled to fully recruit to our patient and carer governor seats on the council. Of course, we do have patient and carer governors on board and indeed in attendance today, but we've really struggled to maintain a full complement of patient and carer governors for several years now. We've had lots of discussions during that time on how we can better advertise the role, how we could configure the role to be better suit the needs of patients and carer governors, and have implemented a number of changes. But despite that, we're still struggling to achieve a full complement. So what we've been doing, as I've alluded to, is quite a lot of work with the membership committee and engaging with other organisations to see what our options are. So there are certain national guidance which I'll come on to in just a moment, but there is actually a level of local discretion that we have as to what we want to do. We've compared our current setup with the setup at other foundation trusts across the country, so I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment, and then I've got some options that I'm asking the council to consider this morning as well. So what I'll do is I'll move through the slides, and then hopefully we can have a discussion then afterwards. So if people have questions, if I could ask them just to hold them to the end, and then we can take them all together. In terms of our council composition, this is all, of course, set out in our constitution, which is available on the public website, but I've summarised here how the council is currently made up. So we can see on the left-hand side of the slide here, we've got 24 elected governors, and we've heard from Anu, who's one of our staff governors this morning, but we have also a public constituency and a patient and carer constituency as well. And on the right-hand side of the slide here, we've got a number of appointed governors, which we typically refer to as partner governors in NHFT, and these are not elected positions, but as the name suggests, really are nominated by partners within the local health and care system. And one of the key things to note is that our current configuration is that 63% of governors are elected by members of the public, and the reason I'm mentioning that will become clear in just a moment. So I mentioned that we had some national legislation or national guidance that we needed to comply with when it comes to establishing and maintaining a council of governors. I've drawn out some of those points here on this slide. So the national guidance says that we must have a public constituency and a staff constituency, but it allows us discretion of whether or not we have a specific patient, service user and carer constituency. We've looked also at what other trusts do. Some trusts have a patient and carer constituency, but many actually don't. And of course, one of the conversations that we've had in the workshop was that a good 50% of governors are patient and carers themselves, although are not necessarily occupying a patient and carer governor seat at the moment. So as I mentioned on the previous slide, with 63% of the council being elected, one of the key national requirements is that more than half the council of governors, and that excludes staff, must be elected by members, and that's trust members. As you can see here, there must be at least 3 staff governors. We have 5, and we then, from the appointed governor perspective, must have at least 1 appointed governor that's been put in place by one of our local authorities. We have two positions within the NHFT Council that are nominated by local authorities in West and North Northamptonshire. And not so much a requirement, more a consideration for organisations in configuring their council. The national guidance says that we should really try and achieve what our former medical director used to describe as the Goldilocks principle of having it not too big, but equally not too small to be effective. So we do periodically review the size of our council and the shape of our council to make sure that it continues to meet our needs. So moving through, we had a good workshop. I think it might have been just before the last Council of Governor meeting, where we were joined by Hugh Jones and had a good discussion about actually how are we hearing the voice of patients and carers at the Council of Governors and as a trust. So I've included one of the slides here that Hugh shared with us, because it shows really on the left-hand side the sources of feedback that are available to the trust and available to governors beyond the patient and carer governor role. So we can see here that we have things such as surveys, the feedback we get through complaints or compliments, incident reports and CQC reports. We've got feedback from external partners coming through to the organisation, and I won't read out the whole list, but we can see that there's a plethora of different sources of feedback that are available, and governors get the opportunity to consume those sources of feedback directly. So, for example, through reading board papers, but also, as we know, governors are also going out and observing service visits, where there's an opportunity again to engage with both staff members and patients themselves. So I'll move us on. In terms of the challenge then, at the moment we've got 6 out of 9 patient and carer seats on the Council of Governors that are vacant. I mentioned earlier that we've tried various different approaches to sourcing people to fill those positions, and governors on the membership committee will be familiar with the specific things that we've tried. We've actually then sought feedback both from those that have occupied the role currently, but also those that have undertaken the role historically. And that suggests actually that the nature of the governor role, i.e. having to attend Council of Governors meetings at set times of the month, may be challenging. For example, people with caring responsibilities have often reflected, I'm very willing to contribute to the trust, but actually attending a set meeting is not always possible for me. And we have benefited from the advent of Microsoft Teams, as it has been a little bit more flexible for people that perhaps would otherwise need to be thinking about leaving the person they're caring for to travel to a meeting. Often it's possible for people to juggle responsibilities. But notwithstanding that, until we resolve the situation, we are required to seek nominations or seek go out to election for all vacant roles on our Council of Governors. So, as I've mentioned earlier, we are looking to the next annual governor election cycle kicking off in the new calendar year, and we will use them a company to help us with that process, which of course is consuming public money. So we do need to think about actually is that a good value investment given some of the challenges we've been having in filling these seats for several years. So I've mentioned some of this already. I won't spend too much time talking about this, but I just wanted to underline really the fact that this is not the first time that we're considering this issue. We've had a lot of conversation in the Governor Membership Engagement and Representation Committee. We've certainly had at least one workshop of the whole Council of Governors considering this. And we started to then think about the different options that we might had available. We did issue an electronic survey to seek the views of all governors on how we should proceed, and we considered the outcomes of those survey results at the last Council of Governors workshop. So moving us through, so the outcomes of that survey I've summarised here. Obviously, a number of questions in that survey, but for brevity, so clearly the headline message coming through was it's incredibly important as a Council of Governors representing members of the public that we really are hearing the voice of patients and carers, because as Anna was describing, that's why we're all here really. So whatever we do, we need to make sure that we have got our ear to the ground in that respect. Whilst many people are not occupying a patient and carer governor seat, actually there's a lot of lived experience that's available to the council already, and I know there's a good example of that from her story earlier on. When we thought about the type of information that's most useful to governors in fulfilling their statutory duties, what was most beneficial was understanding themes and comparisons, and some of the things that I've mentioned on the slide that Hugh shared with us, the sources of feedback such as surveys, patient experience group feedback. Not only it helps us hear from one individual person's experience, but allows governors to see thematic a picture emerging. Yes, and then we had quite a bit of feedback actually from the survey about the extent to which the governor role meets the needs of patients and carers. So I've already talked about the practical constraints that some experienced, but the other aspect that we looked into was the extent to which what governors want out of the what patients and carers want out of the role is consistent with what the patient the governor role offers. And so we talked a little bit in the workshop about actually alternative ways that people can get involved with the trust, for example, being a volunteer, being a peer support worker or an involvee, and we felt that potentially some of those different types of roles may be better suited to what some wish to get out of involvement with the trust. And I've already mentioned that penultimate point about the main reason we're struggling to recruit or certainly to retain is some of those practical constraints on needing to attend Council of Governors meetings. And another interesting point, which is perhaps a broader point for us to consider really, is the extent to which we're able to represent the full needs of our community, or actually the constraints of the role, maybe making it more easy for professionals or those from the middle class, for example, to step forward. So actually, that's probably a broader consideration for us in the upcoming elections campaign. So as you mentioned, what we're looking for then this morning really is to reach a decision on how we want to proceed. So we've got the upcoming elections campaign in the new year. As I mentioned, we could decide to take no action, but that would obviously then mean we are going out to try and recruit to all of those vacant positions at cost. If we do decide to take some action, then we may need to change the composition of the Council of Governors, and that would require a constitution change. And from a governance point of view, that would also require the agreement of the Board of Directors as well. So really, we're coming here this morning to the Council of Governors to get a steer from the Council of Governors before we then potentially pursue a conversation with the board. So those that have read the papers, of course, will have seen that I've set out 4 options which we're asking you to consider this morning. So the first one is making no changes to the composition of the council, and that would then mean going out to seek to fill all currently vacant positions in the upcoming elections campaign. So the other option is we could choose to remove the patient and carer governor seats that are currently vacant and therefore reduce the overall size of the council. And just to be really clear, that would be well within the national guidance, and in terms of benchmarking with other organisations would still mean that we're very consistent in terms of the size of the council with other organisations across the country. The third option then is to convert some of those vacant positions into more public seats, and then to remove the remaining vacant positions. And then the final one is to switch all of the current vacant patient and carer governor seats into public seats. So hopefully those options are clear. We've got now an opportunity, assuming I haven't eaten up all of the time, of course, to have a bit of a discussion about what I've put forward and also the options. And once we've concluded that, we will then, hopefully with the magic of Microsoft Teams, be putting a poll in the chat to seek governor views on how we proceed. So I'll take the slides down now and then hand back to Ashley to help address any questions or comments that are coming through. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Richard, and really helpful to. I think the only thing I would say is we need to be really clear that when we're coming to make the decision, that the options are back up so everyone kind of can see them. But I think one thing I just wanted to add, and obviously invite people to indicate if they'd like to clarify anything. We could have that we have had a debate about actually, does it matter that people can't attend? People often with caring responsibilities or who are service users can't always regularly attend the meetings. Unfortunately, being a governor, it's very much a governance role, and therefore there is a quoracy requirement around the Council of Governors. So the one thing we absolutely need regularly from governors, and it's in the Code of Conduct and it is a requirement, is attendance. So it's sort of the one thing we can't be flexible about, and that's why I think that makes it a little bit more difficult, and has sometimes put us in a difficult position where clearly, you know, we've wanted to support people who want to engage with us through the Council of Governors, but it's been difficult to help them achieve the level of attendance that is required because it's a formal governance role which has this expectation of attendance. So that's always a little bit difficult to manage, which is why I think some people have found it difficult to maintain their commitment to being a patient or carer governor. So I think the options that are presented there is sort of very simple. It's the sort of do nothing, go the full hog of removing the seat, or somewhere in between. And that's, I think, the sort of options that are presented, really. So is everyone content they've understood what we're proposing here? So it's a change really to the composition, doesn't affect anybody who's in role now. I think that's clear, isn't it? So if you're in the Council of Governors at the moment in a seat, it doesn't affect you. It is just about how we handle the vacancies we currently have and have been carrying for some time. So I hope that's helpful clarification. And does anybody need to ask anything further just in terms of the options before Richard opens up a polling thing that we've not used before, I don't think, Richard, but I'll let you introduce that in a moment. So let's see what people would like to explore. Michael, please.
Yeah, thank you. Just in terms of the background, I think what I'm missing are two things. One is when we have gone out to recruit, is it really, really clear that this is not about patient experience, but it is about governance? Because I think from a previous conversation, I wasn't very sure whether the patient carers who was standing really understood the difference between the experience input and governance. Because I think, as we know, there are huge challenges around contributing and understanding governance as opposed to their patient experience. And the second point is that with our existing patient carer governors, what is working well and what is keeping them. So I think for me, there are some contextual aspects that I've still got questions around to help inform my decision making.
Thanks, Michael. Richard, shall I take a few points and then we can perhaps unpack those? So Adam, please.
I think Sharon was before me.
Oh, sorry, Sharon.
Oh,
No?
she thought better of it. Thanks, Krishna. To save a bit of time and conscious of the fact that I do have a habit of doing a lot of talking, I put most of my comments in the chat. But just one thing I wanted just to check is when I looked at this at the weekend, and this is down to me, I'd thought option 3 was reducing the number, but still maintaining that there were some vacancies for carer patient governors to be recruited. But I now understand that it's actually removing 3 and replacing 3. Can I just double check that? And is it too late to have that kind of compromise, which I thought it was suggesting, which was to reduce the number but still go out and try and recruit some 3 rather than 6 carer patient governors? Thank you.
Yeah, so I think number 3, I mean, Richard might want to clarify. Let me just check. Yeah, those are the only questions. But so let's deal with that because that's quite a technical point, isn't it, Richard? But I think we're just talking about actually making them public seat, or 3 of them public seats. Is that right, Richard?
That's right, yes. So we have nine seats currently, 3 of which are occupied. So the 3 occupied would remain occupied. And then the proposition is to then remove 3 of those vacancies and convert 3 of the vacancies into 3 public seats. So that would be the proposition, yeah.
Does that help clarify that, Adam? That okay?
Yes, and as I think on this, as the discussion evolves, I know this is a point that Richard's made, and I myself am a carer who is in the position of a public governor rather than the carer governor. So, yeah, no, it's helpful. Thank you.
And I think that's what we've found actually increasingly. I think it's Richard's point about the lived experience that's actually very evident amongst our public governors. That's often what attracts public governors to the role, and of course our also our I should say our partner governors, and we're looking at Sharon and Sue. You know, they bring a different kind of voice to the table. Sharon brings a voice around young people because that's her job and that's what she does on a day-to-day basis. And Sue equally has always, I know, thought, you know, felt strongly about bringing the voice of older people to because that's her role. So I think it's the combination of ways in which, it's to Richard's point, the ways in which we get that representation, which doesn't always have to be very strictly you sit in a seat which is a patient or carer. I think Carol wanted to come in. Carol?
Yes, thank you, Krishni. I just have a query, Richard, because when you go back onto page 3 of your presentation, we have, apart from the rest of England, we have 4 public constituencies. So if we were going to move towards a, more public governors, how would we, or you, or how would we decide where those 3 would sit? And looking at it, would it not be more appropriate to say 4 new public seats? And therefore, I don't want to muddy the waters, but then that would be 1 more per constituency.
So Richard, I'm conscious also we haven't addressed Michael's point from earlier, but again, this is a slightly more technical point, I think, because Carol's right. I did suddenly think myself, our constituencies, where would we add if we were going to making some of these seats public? So Richard, any thoughts around that?
Yes, so we have got 4 in-county constituencies and 1 rest of England constituency. We had increased the number of public governors in the Northampton area before, so there are more public governors in Northampton than other areas. So the proposal would be to then boost those areas other than Northampton in county to bring everybody back up to a level, hence it being 3 rather than 4.
Okay, so it would equalise, Carol, rather than so Northampton already has an extra one.
Okay, thank you.
Is that okay?
Yes,
so
thank you.
To Michael's point, Richard, I think it was about sort of clarity of role, which I know is something we've tried very hard to address over many years. I think we've tried to be very clear that it is a governance role. And there are other ways. So that conversation about being volunteers or, you know, being involvees, all of that has been very much a part of the Becoming a Governor session that we've tried to address. But it might be useful to get your perspective on that, and also retaining the issue of retaining patient and carer governors as well.
Yes, of course. I think you raise a really good point, Michael. It's certainly something that we've been talking about with the membership committee for some time, actually. And over the last, certainly over the last 2 years, we've tweaked the advertising campaign, if you will, to really focus on being a governor is about governance, and this is what's available here. But also, as Krishni has alluded to, actually, what you're looking for from your involvement with the organisation is to give back or to contribute to a redesign of a pathway. Actually, had you considered becoming a volunteer or an involvee or a peer support worker? So we've put quite a bit of investment into a change in our advertising campaign. And as Krishni has also mentioned, the direct engagement that we've had with individuals that are interested in finding out more, so the Become a Governor sessions, but also when we've been out to some of our staff colleagues that are working with service users that may be then advertising roles for us, we've then relayed the message and had the conversation about actually this is what the reality of the role actually looks like, and can then have a dialogue with somebody to be really clear that may be not suggesting that people are not interested in governance, of course, but that may be why we've seen less interest in the posts, as people perhaps are looking at some of those other opportunities such as an involvee, better meeting their needs.
Okay, I'm really conscious we are now over time, unfortunately. So I wonder whether if there are any other points. We we do need a steer on this because it informs our launch of our elections in January. So what we'd really like to do, if you feel clear about the options that are available, is really get a view from you as to whether there's a preferred option. And we genuinely are just opening that up to you to say what the majority of people on the council would favour. So Richard, do you want to just explain how we're going to do that then? You're on mute, Richard.
Thank you. Yes, so Joe has organised a poll within the Teams platform for us. So hopefully that will soon materialise for us. But essentially what we're looking for is for governors to click on one of the 4 options which correspond to the options in the presentation that we were just working through. And then once you've clicked on your option using the selection button, if you then click submit, and we should, I believe, start to see a live results screen emerge. So if anybody is having difficulties, do raise a hand, because we want to make sure everybody's got the opportunity to contribute. But hopefully this works. Let's. I can see the poll has appeared on my screen at least. So
thanks, Richard.
Actually,
So
could I
just yeah. So this is just for governors, please, not for anybody else to vote on this. And also, it's anonymous, isn't it, Richard? So this does not record. So please do whatever you feel is comfortable. Sorry, Joe, yes?
You've clarified the point I was just going to make, which is this is just for governors, isn't it?
Yes, please, yeah. This is very much a governor decision. The board will separately take your preferred options and consider that at its meeting in January. Everyone okay with the tech? I cannot vote. Simon has said he can't vote, but he's specified an option. So I wonder whether, Richard, if we can't get everyone to do the technology, although actually there does seem to be a fairly clear favourite emerging, in fact. Has everybody who wanted to vote been able to vote, apart from Simon, who's indicated his preferred option in the chat? Has everyone else indicated their preference? Yeah. Pete has said not allowing, and Carol has said no. So I think, Richard, we don't have time to try and kind of
No, what we can do as a suggestion, Krishni, is we'll take the results of the survey for those that have voted, and then outside the meeting, just loop round to everybody else. If people could indicate if they've not been able to vote in the chat, and we will then deal with that outside the meeting and then report back to the council on the decision that we've reached afterwards, if that's okay.
I think that's sensible, Richard. So thank you very much, everybody. So we'll make a note of those who've not been able to vote. And then it's the first time we've tried it. So it's interesting to try this new technology, isn't it, to see how it works. But if you haven't been able to vote, let us know. And then we will take the results as we've got them and adjust them accordingly with your preferred option. So should we take that down now, Richard? Has that gone? I'll close it myself. Good. Okay. Super. Thank you very much, everybody. Interesting exercise, and we'll certainly feed back to you after the meeting. Okay. Well, we move on then to updates from myself and the Chief Executive, which today, as I said, is Dave Mayer. I don't have a huge amount to update you on because much of my activity recently has been particularly of interest will be in relation to the appointment of a new non-executive director. So we'll cover that in the private meeting. So Dave, over to you, please, for an update on kind of what's on your agenda at the moment.
Thanks, Krishna, and hi, everyone. I will try and channel Anu's warmth and kindness in this short segment, just to take some inspiration from that. So there's a hyperlink to the Chief Exec's report from the previous board. I'll just throw out maybe 4 things from it, Krishna. One is the the response to DARS. I know we've talked about this before, but the change.nhs.uk hyperlink remains live and will do until spring next year for people to make a contribution to the 10-year planning process for the NHS. And just as a citizen, that is really important that people participate in that. So please do. As a trust, we will be convening responses back at board level in our role as collaborative lead, etc. So we're taking multiple approaches to make sure the voice of the trust is heard, the voice of mental health is heard, the voice of our patients are heard, and indeed your voice as citizens. So just to re-emphasize that for people. Just the second thing to draw out is probably the finances. Colleagues will have seen national press on this. The report covers some of the expected funding for the NHS. It looks like there is a significant uplift for next year, and there is. It is real resource, but it does quickly tail away in subsequent years and creates quite a pressure across health services, and it has been described as feeling like a real terms cut. And I just say that for colleagues because the narrative that we are hearing nationally is that next year will be deeply challenging for the NHS financially and operationally, and consequently for our public. So just to put that frame around things, we have a strong efficiency programme in the Trust, which is delivering this year. We will need to emulate that approach next year, and thankfully we've managed to do that without necessarily curtailing services, but we need to wait and see what the planning process for next year looks like. So I just flagged that for people, that we are heading into a really challenging period. And for our teams, they are the ones who are going above and beyond really to ensure we can do things as efficiently as possible, and that really is the driver for us currently as an organisation. So thank you to them. Just the third thing to draw out is our group strategy, which David Williams was certainly on the call previously, and his team have been supporting. We are in the ongoing positive stages of that. We had a session with the two boards across Leicester and NHFT, and there'll be further iterations of that. Anu gave reference very eloquently to some of the themes that are emerging from that work. So that's very positive and very timely, because we will need that framework to help guide our response to the 10-year plan in due course and make sure it's anchored in our strategic vision as an organisation. And then finally, just in terms of operational context, celebration for our crisis response unit, which celebrated its first year of operation and was a recipient of a quality award. And just to emphasise how important that is to our population and indeed to our ability to support the system in really challenging times. And just in terms of the system, important to reflect what's described as the quademic, so the four-angle impact of flu, COVID, norovirus, respiratory illnesses, etc. We are seeing that there's an ambulance just gone past St Mary's with its siren on. We are seeing that in significant pressures in A&E, and Anne has had to step out from this meeting to deal with operational pressures. So again, just to emphasise, our teams really managing that and supporting our communities as best we can, but a very, very challenging winter ahead of us. And just to reassure you and governors that we have got good, robust plans in place. We've been planning for this for a long time. It has come earlier than we expected, but we are leaning into it and making a positive contribution. And then just to celebrate Maria O'Neill, who's a palliative care nurse at HMP Littlehay, who've had the fortune of meeting, was recognised with a National Excellence Award for the work she's doing in palliative care within our secured services setting. Again, a setting that we don't often talk about here, but brilliant to see Maria called out and celebrated in that way nationally for her contribution. So thanks very much, Krishni, and of course, happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Dave. And I'm sure the council would also want to extend its congratulations to Maria. That's a fantastic achievement. And thank you, Dave, for highlighting that, it is difficult. I think it's important that the challenging operational context is that we all appreciate that it is actually very difficult out there, if I can say that, for colleagues who are sort of on the front line and facing those operational pressures, for all the reasons Dave said, across really the whole region and nationally. I think this quadruple sort of impact of various viruses, and COVID and early flu, and I think norovirus might be a factor as well. All these things are making the context quite challenging for our staff, but for all our partner staff. But obviously throughout all of this, just to reiterate what Anu said, it is about, when we talk about compassionate care and well-being for all, that's not just about our patients, it's about our staff as well, and how we wrap around as much support for our people in these challenging times is really important. So I think one other thing I wanted to mention, just really to add to what Dave said, and then I'll bring, I think Julia wants to come in. Colleagues will have heard about the Crisis Response Unit, I think probably when we went live with it. Just a fantastic kind of relatively new initiative within the NHS. As Dave said, it's only a year old, but important to say it was co-produced again with in the design of it. I remember Adam or somebody telling me that even the colour had been chosen by patients, and to make sure that it felt it was a good, that the approach was suitable for the people that we're supporting using that vehicle. So I've seen lots of pictures of that. And the one other thing I wanted to mention was that I think we've circulated, Richard and Joe, just checking in with you, the Change NHS link. I think we've already circulated that to governors, but as Dave has said, it's really, we would absolutely encourage you as governors representing your community to contribute to that, because it's a really important vehicle for getting people's views on what the future should look like. So Julia, please.
Thanks, Krishni. Just very briefly, just to add in that at our system-wide non-executive directors meeting recently, the focus was very much around staff through challenging times, and building on Dave's point about we have to be compassionate, and in very stressful, challenging times for patients, service users, etc., we mustn't forget the staff, because it's been a long 4 years. Particularly since COVID, but many other pressures, and there was an intense focus and lots of questioning around how each organisation is actually supporting staff, enabling them to rest and restore, because if we don't do that, then we haven't got a staff, to look after people. So just wanted to add that in, that at a system level, we're absolutely, asking and trying to make sure that we do take care of our staff. Thanks.
Thanks, Julia. Really important to emphasise. And Adam's just highlighted that, it would be helpful to perhaps have a bit more of an insight into our secure settings and how we support them, because it is a very different kind of service, isn't it, in that kind of environment. And so it may be something that Richard, I know Joe's already made a note, but it might be something we could cover in a workshop. We've certainly as a board talked about our strategy in our prison settings, for example, so actually perhaps sharing a bit more about those conversations and some of the challenges and opportunities might be really interesting. So we can certainly pick that up for our future topics for discussion. But if you haven't got any more questions or comments for Dave, thank you very much, Dave. Really helpful. And just as Dave, as I say, just remind everybody that the Change NHS opportunity is still open. I don't know how long it's open for, Dave, but
spring, I think. So probably April, May time. Yeah. Okay,
it's got plenty of time to comment on it if you wanted to, and I think the portal, from what I understand, is quite easy to use. So definitely encourage colleagues to use that. So thank you very much, Dave. We then move on to the final item on our agenda. We're a little bit behind time, but I'm sure Julia and Robin can help be efficient in the way that we cover this. So it's our usual what we call our risk and assurance topic. And on this one, I know Julia and Robin will explain the context a bit more, but this is something we felt was quite important to share with you. So over to both of you. Thank you.
It's actually Robin that's going to lead on this today. So over to Robin.
Yeah, I get the last item on the agenda, and I will, as Krishni's indicated, try and be as brief as possible in going through the slides which we have today. And I'm very grateful for Linda, our chief nurse, and Liz Millett from the CQC team to produce these slides for us. It is really important that we do learn from all kinds of deaths within healthcare, obviously, and the particularly difficult area of homicides carried out by people who are the patients of mental health services has always been a very difficult and contentious area of practice that's received quite a lot of attention over the last sort of 30 years, really, since the 1994 requirement on trusts to conduct a review every single time a death or a fatality is brought about by a patient of mental health services. Since then, there's been various iterations of that. There was at one time a national audit or confidential inquiry of all patient homicides, which I used to be the commissioner of, in fact, in a previous life. And in fact, there are about 100 fatalities carried out by people with mental health problems a year. They're divided into 3 groups in the main. Particularly common fatalities which are conducted against people who are their relatives or people who they live with, so domestic, or people who live with them in flats, shared flats or whatever. This is particularly common. Another group which shouldn't be forgotten is, of course, healthcare workers and other social care workers who are sometimes the victims. But it is very much rarer for it to be people who are entirely random, as it were, external people in the street. So the fatalities carried out by Valdo Calocane in Nottingham are particularly shocking in that they were people who he randomly just went out and assaulted. And the lessons of those are what we're going to talk about today. So if I can have the next slide, please, Joe. A review of that case was carried out by the Care Quality Commission under Section 48, and this was about the care offered to that patient by Nottinghamshire Health Services at the time, and also Rampton. And it was designed to very much hear from families and to hear the public, hear from the public about what was being done to address the issues that were being raised in relation to this case. And the report that CQC produced was done in 2 parts, with the first looking at community mental health services and the second particularly focusing on the care that was offered in Nottinghamshire to Valdo. You can have the next slide too. So CQC then said all of these key findings, which they considered to be relevant, of course, therefore, to other mental health trusts. And they focused on these 5 topics: people accessing care and the struggling they were having to access the care they needed, the quality of that care and whether it met needs of particular individuals, the safety of services, particularly in relation to high levels of demand, the kind of governance, ownership and leadership of these issues within trusts, and the way in which communication and other participation and collaboration between services was carried out, and how much across different organisations responsible there was true kind of communication and therefore good planning. If I could have the next slide, please. In particular, in terms of part 2, in relation to Nottinghamshire itself, there were clear issues about assessing and managing risk in the community. And essentially, this is a matter of risk, because if there was a decision made that this particular patient did not pose a significant risk to others, then the degree of continuing management of him as an individual was reduced. And indeed, they found that there were issues in this regard with this particular patient, that his risk had not been assessed adequately. There was also a very substantial area of concern, which the families have been very vocal about in this particular case, about their engagement, the degree to which they were listened to in relation to Valdo's needs. and how much they themselves were asking and continuing to ask for greater attention to his needs being made by health services. Another important area is in relation to discharge planning, because the whole area of people dropping out of services and choosing to disengage from services and indeed being discharged from services, perhaps not appropriately, was something that was very much identified in this case. And then there was a whole cluster of other issues to do with medicines management and reviews about those, and clinical decision making about detaining patients under the Mental Health Act. So these are some of the key things that CQC had found, and they in turn therefore wanted to ask individual other mental health services, such as our own, about the degree to which we ourselves were able to speak confidently about how we'd address these issues. So if I could have the next slide, please. So they sent out 2 communications to all NHS trusts, which asked them to take specific actions. The first was about just details about the register of how many people we had and who they were and what their names were and how they were communicated with. And that's the first of these, number 1 on the slide in front of you. Far more importantly was the second question. The CQC wanted to get information about the standard of care, about the degree to which trusts had reflected upon the issues and recommendations. They had self-assessed and audited community mental health services, that identified areas for improvement in quality of care, and put in place, or are putting in place, action plans and timescales to address the areas for improvement. And we were required to do so by 30th of September. And they in turn will continue to monitor our progress at our engagement meetings. So that's what their ask of us, and we obviously complied with that request. But therefore, that audit and that set of processes also then put demands upon us. And the next slide then moves on to look at some of the actions that we've carried out in relation to that. So next slide, please. So clearly, as a trust, we have reflected on these issues and recommendations. And there's an enormous amount of work which has taken place, particularly within the series of staff committees which sit under the Quality and Safety Committee, which I'm Deputy Chair, and Julia is, of course, Chair. And those feeder committees, including another one that's not even listed there, which is the Patient Safety Committee, have taken a very active role in looking at the issues raised by Valdo and feeding them up to Quality and Safety, and then onwards to the board itself. And observers to the board, you can go back and look at the recordings that are still available, which show that these matters were discussed in the most précis form at board, but in more detail then they were discussed at Quality and Safety. CQC required us to audit community mental health services against the recommendations of the review, and then on to other services as well. And all of this has been done. And through these audits, we reviewed the quality of care, patient safety, public safety, staff experience, and so on and so on. And as said, they've been reported up. And we've developed really quite extensive action plans to be monitored through Quality and Safety to offer a degree of assurance at board that these matters have been taken seriously by the Trust, and the Trust has really engaged with the process of learning from the findings of the Callacane Review to inform and develop and improve practice where needed. So the point of this session is to assure governors that the board, and in particular the executive team, have taken seriously the findings of the Callacane Review and can offer assurance to you that we have been assured of the degree of commitment to addressing these issues and to really learning from the very sad events in Nottingham. So that's the end of the slide pack. Happy to move on to questions, and I'm sure that both Julia will want to come in at this point, and probably Linda, I would suspect, and maybe Anne as well, if we have time.
Thank you very much, Robin. Julia, anything you wanted to add?
Thanks, Krishna. Just very briefly, just to add in from the assurance angle, that I just want to add in that, having worked in other organisations, this has been such a transparent process through NHFT. You know, no stone unturned. We're asking any questions that we feel we want to ask, and that the scrutiny will continue in quite detail through Quality and Safety Committee. And I attend regularly, or Robin goes if I can't, to the safety group that Robin mentioned earlier. So just to add that layer of assurance, really, that we will continue this, and it has been a very open and honest process all the way through. Thanks.
Thank you, Julia. Linda, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Robin. I wanted to just add to our colleagues that in NHFT, we went beyond the ask requirement of CQC. So the ask focus of CQC was looking at community mental health teams, and these were adults of working age and the associated forensic community mental health teams. We spread this out further. We looked at older people's community mental health teams. We also looked at children, young people, and our learning disability autism team. So that's why it's taken us even longer to be working on this, because we then decided to be ahead and look at all our services that deliver mental health, learning disability, autism services within the community. So that work is still ongoing. We are due to go back and provide a further update to Quality and Safety Committee, where there will be further scrutiny, as Julia and Robin have said. But additionally to that, we do have a section regularly within the organization where we report on learning from deaths, and this is captured within our patient safety reports. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Linda. Really important. Sheila, please.
I do think there is a particular risk for all mental health trusts around homeless patients, and particularly those that don't have any form of contact once they're discharged from our services. So how you support those people to access medication when they're not particularly engaging. So I mean, I don't think there's a clear answer to that, although we do in our trust have the adult risk management process, which can be used as a multi-agency tool to try and track where homeless people are, and have a group meeting to try and support that person.
Okay, thank you, Sheila. Thank you. It's an important point, and I'll probably what I'll do is take Michael's question or comment as well, and then loop back round if anybody wants to respond further or feels able to. Michael, please.
Yeah, thank you everybody for the very detailed, well, comprehensive overview. My question is that in terms of further challenge and scrutiny, because in a way it's your organisation, you know, NHFT organisational assessment across the system. Is there an opportunity for the system, particularly with within the ICS, for example, to offer a challenge, a scrutiny over the assessment of the work?
Thank you, Michael. I think the ICB have done their own review, but I'll let. So the two actually went hand in hand around the same time, if I recall. But I'll bring Anne and Linda in. So I think the question about the ICB, I think probably worth also saying, certainly as board members, we've also discussed the wider learning around discharge. To Sheila's point, or people who've disengaged from our services for whatever reason. What's the wider learning? It might not be that they were at risk of committing a criminal offence, but actually, is there more learning that we can get from understanding why people disengage from our services and how we can continue to engage with them in those circumstances, which kind of fits what Sheila was saying about particularly homeless community or people who are homeless, but certainly there's some wider learning there. So be good, Anne and Linda, if you can make some final comments around those, that would be great. Anne, please. You're on mute, Anne.
Oh dear, sorry. On the second point first, just to say that yes, the ICB have done their reviews, and we've been very much part of sharing information and being part of that confirm and challenge. So I think that's been really important because you're getting then a view from all different angles. It's also by the ICB doing that, we've done a lot of the work within the Mental Health and Learning Disabilities and Autism Collaborative, which means that brings wider partners, voluntary sector, homeless, and different sectors to the table to think about how we're working together on this agenda, because often, as we know, with a number of Robin's experience have been much more on this, but of reviews in the past, it's about different agencies will have different points of contact and how that's knitted together. So I think that's really important. I was just going to mention the homelessness work. It kind of also fits in a little bit to the Crisis Cafe comment right at the beginning, which was about how the focus very much is around how we work in localities, in places and in neighbourhoods, and how the hub approach of agencies working together, which is developing, and we've got different areas that are kind of building up around this, really does then bring that multi-agency focus to supporting people in a smaller locality, which picks up such issues as homelessness, because you come to know the people in your place, in your neighbourhood, and what agencies are involved, and how we've done a lot of work with homelessness, and particularly about pathways and how we all understand those, and what our ambition is really around that subject. So I think the agenda naturally is helping us get different agencies' views and interactions to enrich the work that we do.
Thank you, Anne. Really important that these approaches are multi-agency, because actually it's not something we can do on our own. The needs of that population are multifaceted, aren't they? So the support requirement is also the same. Linda?
I'll come in on both points that have been raised by Michael and Sheila. So on the first point for the ICB, there's an ICB system quality group. So within that system quality group, that's where the presentation was done by Richard Amponsa, who is the Deputy Director of Nursing, around the work that we were doing. And then the system quality group reports into the system quality committee. So it has gone through with ICB colleagues being kept abreast of the work that we have been doing. Additionally, when the CQC was requesting this information, it did go out through the single points of contact. So it meant it went through what we call the SPOC. So certainly our ICB colleagues would have received that, and they too were aware that we needed to submit that information. So they have been involved in this. And as Anne said, we've done a lot of work within the collaborative, again, working across the system and with our ICB colleagues. With regards to patients who do not engage, I'm pleased to say within NHFT, we were ahead of the curve on that one. So we did review our policy, which looks at discharging patients. So previously, when patients didn't engage, they would be discharged. But we looked at that and had already made those amendments with regards to the fact that it's not everyone who disengages because they're choosing to disengage. It could be linked to their illness. Some people relying on a carer, someone to support them to attend. So we reviewed that. So we'd already put something in place. What I'd also like to add with regards to our policy having already been reviewed is around the fact that certainly where we've looked at situations of patients who may disengage for whatever reason. I remember this last year, the conversation, I'll put Dave May on the spot, when we were looking at the information for our patients and looking at whether or not we complete up-to-date information, the next of kin, GP registration details. So all that information is really key. And I remember that went in and feeds into our records management around making sure we capture the information that we require for our patients, and also leads into some of our fields indicators that we require for our health inequalities work. So we've done a lot of work in ensuring that we're keeping patient details up to date. So where we do have those situations, we try and identify who is the next point of contact, who else can we involve, as opposed to waiting until someone has disengaged. there will be patients who choose so that you do not contact someone, but actually where there's concerns about someone's safety, around their risk issues, then we would be going right up to our Caldecott Guardian to actually get consent to then breach that so that we can keep people safe in the community. I accept that it is one of those areas that nationally we all have to work together to keep patients safe, and it will always be a difficult one to manage, but within NHFT, certainly we have been doing a lot of work around that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Linda. Some really important assurance there. So final comment from Robin on this, please, Robin.
I was just going to say that, I mean, what you've heard there is a lot of discussion about how reviews were made about people disengaging for services. Don't forget, this was a specific review in relation to homicides. But what's happened is that it's been used as a kind of driver for a much wider review of issues that arose from it. And so the issue of fatality or fatalities has been used as a kind of gateway to trigger all kinds of other assurance processes within the trust, which I think are incredibly useful. And just as a last point, I usually sit on the ICB quality group, so therefore there is a link up to it from the board, so that Linda goes as well and I go as well, and so the board is involved in those discussions which happen at ICB in relation to these kind of matters.
Thank you, Robin, really helpful. And as Linda mentioned, our very own lead governor, Richard Amponso, was actually the one who presented the assurance to the ICB. So Richard is obviously directly involved in that. But I think the really important point is the broader point, really, that I think our responsibility as a board, and I hope you have heard in terms of the assurance, is that for you as the Council of Governors holding the board to account through the non-executive directors, is really to make sure that we are using the opportunity for learning, because things do go wrong. Things clearly went wrong in that case. But what is the learning that we can all get from that? And that's the key thing that I think the things that we've been sharing with you in how the trust has tried to respond is about that point around broader learning and how we can make sure that we avoid that particular situation happening, but also any other opportunities for improvement. So really important, and I hope that's been helpful. We will have, as colleagues have mentioned, we will continue to be gaining assurance around this through the Quality Committee, and you will see in the threads of papers and things that further assurance will be required and requested, no doubt, from Julia, Robin, and indeed the ICB, and we'll continue to obviously keep you up to date as we need to. So thank you very much, everybody, for contributions on that. I just note in the chat that Heber has said it would be great to hear about spiritual and wellbeing services within the trust, because we do have chaplain services that provide that. So that's perhaps something we can think about might be useful as a story or from that service into our council at some point. And Adam's made the point that this links again very much back into our strategy, which is all about being person and people centered, which I think is really important. So thank you, everyone. We're a little bit over time. So I would like to conclude the business of our Public Council of Governors. So unless there's any other urgent business that needs to be, that governors would like to raise, I would very much like to conclude this meeting now. But it's really important that we have a private Council of Governors meeting at which we need to make a very important decision. I don't think we will need very long from you on that, but I would really appreciate it if as many governors as possible made it back into that meeting. So can I suggest we join the link for the private meeting by 12:20. So that's just 5 minutes for a comfort break for Council of Governors, please. And then I think we can conclude that business pretty quickly. So I do hope to be able to let you off for a bit of well-deserved lunch very quickly. But I would be very grateful if as many governors as possible joined that private meeting at 20 past latest, please. But thank you very much, everybody, for your contributions. And may I wish you all season's greetings and an enjoyable Christmas period or festive season, however you celebrate it. Thank you all.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Christian.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye,
everyone.
everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.